Here's how to fix a rear suspension clunk by replacing the stabilizer linkage. When driving over bumpy surfaces, I can hear clunking noise coming from the rear suspension. First thing we're going to do is jack up the vehicle and remove the rear wheel. This here is the rear stabilizer linkage. It joins to the strut at the top and the stabilizer bar at the bottom. These stabilizer links are connected to the strut with a ball joint and a boot. Sometimes after high mileage they can wear out, and if you shake them you can hear a lot of play. This is the #1 cause of rear suspension clunks on these Toyotas, and this linkage will need to be replaced. Now you might want to check other rear suspension components to make sure they're not wearing out as well. Now normally to get the stabilizer link off you need to use a closed end 14mm wrench and an Allen key. The Allen key goes in here and stops the ball joint from rotating. But as you can see, mine is stripped out here. They're very easy to strip out, so we're going to have to find another way to get this nut off. I'm going to try to use an impact gun to whip it off. As you can see, the ball joint is just spinning. Now the next option is to use vice grips to clamp onto the ball joint through the boot. This will damage the boot, but we're going to be replacing the links anyways. Here we go. Now we can remove the link from the strut, like that. Okay, we're going to try the impact gun on the bottom part of the stabilizer linkage where it connects to the stabilizer bar. And it's just spinning the ball joint. So I've got my set of vice grips onto the ball joint of the bottom of the stabilizer linkage. I'm going to attempt to remove the nut. Okay, I give up with the vice grip. I'm just going to have to cut this link off. And that's it, the link is off. Well, it looks like I took off the link, but I didn't get to take off the nut. Okay, I was able to get the bolt out after a lot of grinding. I was also able to grind a little bit of my stabilizer bar off. You gotta be careful. This here is the old stabilizer linkage. That's the end that we knocked loose. This is the other end here. As you can see, it's quite loose and jiggly. Also note, it is a sealed unit. Okay, by comparison, here is the new bar from Evotech. As you can see, the diameter of the bar is a lot thicker and it feels a lot heavier than the OEM bar. You can also see the ball joint fitting is quite stiff. I can't even move it with my hand. And on the back here, it comes with these Zerk fittings. We're going to have to grease this up before we put it in. The best thing about these bars is there's no little hex nut inside of there that can strip out. Instead, it's got the nut on the outside and then another nut on the inside here, which you can use 2 wrenches simultaneously to tighten up without it stripping out. Okay, I'm going to be using a little bit of high temperature wheel bearing grease and a grease gun to grease the linkage. Next, I'm going to install these Zerk fittings onto the linkage. It just screws onto the bottom here and tighten that up. Next, I'm going to be applying a little bit of grease into the ball joints. I'm going to put the grease gun on and pump it in. I'm going to put some good anti-seize on the threads. Make sure we don't have problems taking this off. Next, I'm going to replace the new stabilizer linkage back onto the car. Might take a little bit of jiggling to get the linkage back in. And then replace the 15mm nut on the bottom. And then replace this nut back on the top. Okay, to tighten this up, I'm going to use a 14mm wrench at the back here to hold the ball joint. And then a 15mm wrench on the front nut here and tighten this up. And just snug that down. Okay, same thing on this side. I'm going to get the 14mm wrench on the back and the 15mm on the front and tighten this one up. It's cold. We're just going to snug that down nice and tight. Okay, one last check to make sure everything's nice and snug before we put the wheel back on. Next, I'm going to replace the wheel. Finally, we're going to take the car for a test drive and make sure that the noise over the bumps is gone.